Welcome to the DaVinci Resolve Podcast. We are on episode 7 here, and quite honestly, it's been a little while. It's been a hot minute since I was able to sit down and film one of these podcasts here, answer your guys' questions, and talk about some things DaVinci Resolve. So today, we're getting back into it. We're going to answer your questions about DaVinci Resolve. We're going to talk about the new updates a little bit, and I'm excited to be back here filming another podcast. I know I had a lot going on, with just some different things happening, busy schedule, working on this new studio here, and that's finally done. I'm going to have a video out about that soon. Just got to finish up filming that, but let's just jump right into it and start talking about DaVinci Resolve 18.5 update. This thing has a ton of awesome stuff in there, and as of yesterday, which was May 4th, may the 4th be with you, we had a beta 2 come out of DaVinci Resolve 18.5. So if you are on DaVinci Resolve 18.5, you had the first download that they released there. There is now a beta 2 that updated and fixed a few things, or maybe a lot of things. I'm not really sure what got updated in 2. I just downloaded it and installed it. But if you guys aren't running in 18.5 yet, no worries. You can just check out all the cool videos with all the cool stuff that's out there. You want to wait till it comes out in a full release. Not a problem. I totally get that. A lot of times I would rather wait if I'm working on a big project, wait to upgrade. But, being that I'm making videos for you guys here on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and upgrade as soon as I can so I can get going with all these new features, new tools, so I can share them with you guys and really just get in there and figure them out for myself. So a couple of the big updates here. I got some notes, a lot of notes here. We're just going to hit a couple highlights, though. In DaVinci Resolve 18.5, we've got the auto captions. I think a lot of people are really excited about this. The auto subtitles, and really it just uses the AI to go through and either caption your entire video, create the subtitles, create the subtitle clips for you. Does a really good job from what I've seen at creating those subtitles for you. And I do have a video on it. You can check it out on my channel, all about the auto-generated captions and transcriptions. So you want to know how to use it, you want to see what it's all about, you can check out that video on my channel. There were a lot of awesome updates in Fairlight, and I made a whole video about that with the Fairlight updates. You can head on over and check that out, but we now can make edit and mix groups in DaVinci Resolve in the Fairlight page, and it really just gives you another way to be able to kind of organize your tracks, your audio, and just be able to work with them in different ways, right? There's a lot of ins and outs of how different groups work between, say, buses and mix groups and VCAs. There's a lot of different things that, you can do with each one of those. And depending on your situation, what you want to do with your audio, that might dictate, how you want to use those particular options. But a lot of great stuff here in Fairlight. Voice isolation got updated for Linux. So now you have voice isolation in Linux as well as the dialogue leveler. You've got that in there. There was enhanced support for Dolby Atmos. I've never really used the Dolby Atmos stuff before. Atmos. It's not Atomos. It's Atmos. So a lot of good updates there from what it looks like, although I haven't gotten too involved with all the Dolby stuff yet, but something I'd like to get into eventually. You've got things like the ability to pan buses. You've got some other cool integrations that you can integrate into Fairlight with things like Rewire and Sound Miner when it comes to audio stuff. So if you're into any of that, some improvements there. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Through the color tab, you've got the relight tool, which I just put a video out about. Really cool in there. There's literally pages of stuff here that got updated, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. So I'm not going to run through all this stuff, but stay tuned to my channel as well as our other friends out there that create DaVinci Resolve videos. A lot of people are putting out great content on all these updates and features. I'm watching them because I love all my fellow creators out there. So I'll just continue posting out videos, too, about all the updates that we have here in 18.5. Now, one question is, when's the full release going to be out? That I don't know. I don't have any insider info, but hopefully it'll be out soon. We have a beta 1 out for a couple weeks before they launched beta 2. So I imagine it's not going to be that long. I mean, Blackmagic Design is usually pretty quick to turn these things around. Blackmagic is awesome. They just do such a great job with Resolve. They put the features in that we're all looking for. They turn things around quick. They're always, updating. You can't beat them. Blackmagic does a fantastic job. I love these guys. Love this program. It's so great. And the community of people out here that are on DaVinci Resolve is awesome, right? We've got not only awesome creators that have been here for a while that many of you guys know and watch, but now we're noticing that a lot of the big creators are migrating over to DaVinci Resolve from other programs like Adobe or maybe Final Cut or whatever it might be. So it's really cool to see some of these big-time creators, your Peter McKinnons, your Maddies, your Sarah Dietschys, these other people that are making their way to DaVinci Resolve just because maybe, I don't know, they need a change. Maybe they're having some troubles with the Adobe stuff or whatever it might be. Maybe just jumping on the bandwagon. I don't know. But it's great that, some of these big-time creators here on YouTube are bringing awareness to DaVinci Resolve, Blackmagic Design, and the awesome product that they have here for video editing. I mean, it's really fantastic. So without further ado, let's jump into some of your questions and answer some questions you guys have about DaVinci Resolve on a little bit of a limited time schedule here, because I am going to be chatting with one of the fellow YouTubers here that makes DaVinci Resolve videos. I'm not going to mention them, but they know who they are if they're listening. So I got a call with them in a little while here. So let's jump right into your questions. First question coming from ISO La Della Rose TV. I have no idea if that's how you say it, but he says, hi, if I use a limiter in my editing gameplay videos, should I turn off the ceiling? Oh, I can't. Sometimes I got some trouble reading, If I use a limiter in editing my video gameplay videos, should turn the ceiling down or the input. So let's just jump into the limiter and take a look. I just have a random project open. It's actually the auto captions video that I've got open here. Jump into Fairlight here. So once you're in Fairlight here, you want to make sure you got your mixer open at the top. We're going to come into our mixer. I'm just going to go ahead and I've already added on the limiter effect in DaVinci Resolve here, which is the standard effect that we've got. To find it, just real quick, +, Dynamics, Fairlight Effects, right here, limiter. Go ahead and click on that. And that's going to go ahead and throw it on your track. Now, when we're looking at the limiter, you see we've got a few options here, right? We've got our ceiling right here, and we've got the input level, right? So the ceiling is what is going to set our limiter for us, right? Like how loud do we want it to go? So I'm not too familiar with exactly what your clip looks like, but what I would do is I would start by dropping down the ceiling a little bit, because we don't want it to peak, our audio to peak all the way up. We want to bring that back a little bit and limit it at a certain point, right? So for example, what I might choose is just something like, maybe -0.5 or -1 for the ceiling, because I want the audio to be loud enough, but I don't want it to, go above that and peak. So I might set that there and just leave my input at 0 to start. Now, if I play through my clip and it's not loud enough, so for example, let's just solo this track here. I don't even know what's on the track, but let's bring it up. I apologize if it doesn't sound good. This is just a scratch track, but as an example here, I think it's something good we can work with. So let me play through it. We're going to take a look at our input levels as well as our output levels and see if we have any reduction going on. Move forward here with updated versions of Resolve. But right now it's only in English, so keep that in mind. So right now our levels are not that loud. So let's say I needed to boost that up a little bit, right? And one of the ways I can do that is to increase the input right here, right? I can boost this up, and let's just see if I, really exaggerate it. We'll go up to +12 or whatever. Let's see what that gives us. But you can either do it for the entire timeline. So you can see now it's getting up there and peaking. Now, if we apply the ceiling and we lower this down, listen to what happens with that. Or you can set in points and out points and do it just for that section. Now, I do have a little hum in there. I had a problem with this video, actually, when I filmed it, that I had a hum in the background, which was killing me, which was electrical interference from some wire I had crossing one of my microphone wires. So that's what that hum is that you hear in there. And thankfully, I was able to remove it and still use the video. But you can see that the increasing the input is like boosting up the gain or the volume, bringing those levels up a little bit. So, and then when I apply the ceiling, when I lower that ceiling down, it's like applying compression to my my audio clip there. So it really depends on your particular clip. If you don't need the extra gain, I would just leave the input where it is. But what you want to do actually before you even apply the limiter is set your audio levels properly, using other methods before you just go dump a limiter on there, right? Maybe you want to come in here and you want to adjust your gain line so that your dialogue levels or your gameplay, for example, maybe you want your gameplay to be down around, I don't know, -25 dB, so it's underneath your voice. It's not too loud. You want to adjust that first. So you really, in my mind, I mean, you may not even really need the limiter too much if you just set your audio levels properly at first. I don't know. What I usually use a limiter for is if you take a look at my main bus out, I put a limiter here. And now this is a waves limiter plugin that I like that I use on all my videos on my main out, my bus 1. And this just says, it tells Resolve or tells my audio, say, hey, keep it, 1.4 dB below the max that I can do because I don't want it to peak. So I want to make sure I stay under those peaking levels. And I throw this on really more as a safeguard, just in case something is loud in the video. Usually it doesn't even kick in, but it might. But I like to have it there as as like a safety net, just in case. So that's kind of how I would use the limiter. Hopefully that helps kind of answer your question a little bit more. I got my little Eastern State Penitentiary mug here. You guys see this? It's one of those mugs, you get it wet there and then, or not wet, you get the heat in there and then it changes color, right? It's just a black mug. Pretty cool. Went to that place down to Philly around spring break a few weeks back. I'll be posting some pictures about it, but really cool place. If you guys are ever down in Philly, definitely check that out. All right, moving on. The next question here. Great video. Any advice for when tracking stops after 1 frame? Thanks again. And this is Michael Han, maybe the K is silent, not sure. And this was on a video about tracking objects in DaVinci Resolve 17. So when you're tracking objects, you want to make sure you've got a point that's got good contrast or that is easy for the computer to follow, right? If you've got something that's like a light gray and then a little bit darker and they're kind of close in color, it's going to be harder for DaVinci Resolve to track that across your frame. So look for a point that's got good contrast. And I believe that you can even create your own contrast, right? Get in there with the color wheels and the color tab. Oh my goodness. I got alarms going off everywhere here. Turn that off. All right, turn that off. We got alarms going off everywhere. So you can apply a grade to your clip, I believe, where you just creates a lot of contrast, right? To give you a good point to track. So definitely look for something that's going to be easy for the computer to track, has some good contrast in it, drastically different colors, whatever it might be. It's not always going to be possible, but, that's what's going to help you be able to find or allow DaVinci Resolve to be able to track things a little bit better. So that's what I would try. I always look for a point with more contrast. Now, if the tracking does go off, you can always manually adjust it a little bit and kind of change it too manually if you need to. So that's another thing that you can keep in mind. All right, next question is on DaVinci Resolve 18 transitions. Everybody loves a good transition, right? And they added a bunch of cool new ones in DaVinci Resolve 18.5. So if you haven't checked them out, check them out. All right, this comes from HK 1990 Gaming. OMG, dude, this has been killing me for about a year now. I had no idea why my transitions would work in some areas, but not in others. I was working on my YouTube videos, trying to make some shorts, and I could not figure out how to make it look good without the transition. So your video was super helpful and honestly gave me an even more helpful stuff than I could have asked for. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I always try to throw bonus extra tips in videos, that I might not timestamp or anything, but there's a lot of little tidbits here and there that just as you're working come in handy. So I try to, give you guys extras in the videos, just so you know. So yeah, the problem with the transitions is you need a little overlap, right? We got to have one clip. We can't just have the very start of one clip and the very end of another clip, butt it up together and throw a transition on there. It's not going to work. You need a little bit of overlap, right? So if these are my 2 clips, boom, we got a little overlap there. And a lot of other programs work like that too. I know people who come from more, I'm going to just call it simpler editors, right? Where you can slide the clips together and they just kind of overlap automatically. People want Resolve to do that, but it's doing the same thing, right? If you don't have any handles or any part of your clip underneath your cut, then there's not as much there's no information for it to make the transition. So I think a lot of these programs work the same. It's just the way it appears on screen and mentally the way you see it in Resolve is different than a lot of other programs. So you're like, why doesn't it work? I could do it in other programs, So you always need a little extra, a couple extra frames, 5 frames on each clip maybe. And you should be able to drop a transition on there. So that's a huge, issue that newbies with applying transitions is, hey, I could drop on a transition. And the reason is that you need to just have a little bit more handles to your clip, right? A little bit more of the clip underneath your cut. Moving on, hands-on JavaScript. Is there a way to eliminate the keyboard stroke sound completely and not have the instructor sound? Any suggestions? By the way, great tips. And this is on a Make Your Audio Sound Professional using Fairlight video that I've got. So when it comes to something like that, a little cup of coffee here. Man, I love coffee. Coffee is awesome. When it comes to something like the keyboard strokes, right? So if I'm filming here and I'm typing and my keyboard is right either in front of the microphone or I've got the microphone, in an area where it's going to pick up the keyboard. I don't know that you can remove all of it. What I would try is voice isolation if you have the studio version, because my guess is that's going to be the best bet to try and remove some of that. So I would try that, voice isolation, and see how that works out. If you don't have studio, you don't want to pay, the $2.99 to get studio, which I highly recommend that you do if you edit, a fair amount of videos. You could try the Waves Clarity VX plugin, and that you could get on sale for $30. It'll work in DaVinci Resolve. Side note, it's not officially supported, which really just means it hasn't been tested in Resolve. But I've been using the Waves plugins for a long time in Resolve. They work great. But if you reach out to them, they'll tell you that Resolve's not supported, but it works fine. I digress. But the Waves Clarity VX is essentially the same thing as the voice isolation. They both work really well. They do a really good job. So I would try that if you only want to spend $30, to fix your audio there versus getting the studio version. But honestly, I'd probably just save up and get studio. That's what I would do. But hey, it's just me. So the other tips that you got for removing that keyboard sound is right now my keyboard. So my microphone's here and my keyboard is on the other side of my microphone. So if I type, hopefully my microphone's not going to pick it up. And with this particular microphone, you can, or microphones in general, you can pick one that's a dynamic microphone, right? That just picks up really in front of me versus like a condenser microphone, which will pick up more. So microphone choice is one way to deal with it. Keyboard and microphone placement is another way to deal with it. And if you need to remove it, I'd go voice isolation or Clarity VX. All right, moving on to the next question here. All right, let's see. We got Luke, L-U-C, Luke, on an older video here, how to set audio levels in DaVinci Resolve, which I should make an updated video on that for you guys. Maybe I'll do that. All right, he says, thank you. This video helped a ton. I had no idea how Fairlight worked, but my audio was way too high at certain points. Screams because I was playing a horror game. I needed a way to tone down the high parts, and I was finally able to do that with the volume markers. Thanks again. Hopefully I can get better at this soon enough. So I said, hey, awesome, man. You're welcome. I said, maybe you want to try using the compressor to help reduce those loud parts, because the compressor is going to compress the louder parts of your video and limit you or stop you from peaking. So a compressor is a really good tool to use between using the makeup to boost the quieter parts and using the compressor to bring down the louder parts. Now, we do have the dialogue leveler in 18.5 and 18.4. I think came out in 18.4. Got the dialogue leveler, so you can use that, and that does a good job too. I like the compressor just because it's always been there. That's what I like. And one thing that I find with the dialogue leveler is that sometimes it just takes on my machine, it takes a second or two to kick in. So if I'm doing a lot of editing, I'm going to leave that dialogue leveler off until I'm done editing, because when I'm trying to do a bunch of little clips and move the playhead around, and it takes that second for the dialogue leveler to start working, it's kind of annoying. So I just turn it off a lot of times. And for the majority of the time, I'm not going to use the dialogue leveler. I'm going to use compression and the dynamics panel, because it just works out, good in my situation. So compressor is a good one if you want to help balance out your audio a little bit better between the quiet parts and the loud parts. Love me some good compression and the dynamics. All right, next question we have here is Xavier Beasley on a video about markers and creating markers. I use markers in DaVinci Resolve all the time. Actually, boop, there's one right there if you check out on the screen. He says, thank you for this quick question. Is there a way to copy markers on a timeline and paste them on a clip, or do I have to remake every marker that's on my timeline and put them on my clips? I was editing an hour-long video and used markers to tell me where I wanted to break down the hour-long video into clips. I copied the timeline and started editing each clip, but because I'm getting rid of the dead space and adding funny pop culture clips in between, my markers are all messed up after editing the first clip, and I've got a dozen plus to go. Well, I don't know if let's just jump into the edit tab here in DaVinci Resolve. So I've got a few markers here, in my timeline. I use them all the time to create the chapters for YouTube. But let's say if you put it here on your timeline, and what I gather is that you're saying you want it on your clip, right? So I don't know if you can just drag it down. No, you can't drag it down. I mean, I think the only way to get it from the timeline marker to the clip as a marker is to just, let's say I had a marker in my timeline here and I want to put it on the clip. I would just bring my playhead here. And I mean, if you only have got a dozen of them, that really isn't too bad. And I just go boom and drop it onto my clip like that. I think that might be your best bet. I don't know how else you're going to get it from the timeline down to there. I'm not saying it can't be done. I don't know. Never tried to do that before, but there may be a way. And if somebody else knows a way, drop it in the comments below. Now, if you did want to go take your markers from one project to another, you can do that by exporting your markers. So if you went to the media pool, you found your timeline. Let's see, where's my timeline? Here we go. If I right click on it, I go timelines, and then I go export. And I come down to timeline markers to EDL. You can export it, and then you can go to your new timeline or new project, whatever it might be. And then you can go to import, and where is it? Import timeline markers from EDL. And that should put all the timeline markers on there for you. You should be good to go. So that's about all I got for that one on the markers. Let's go to the next question. All right, this is on how to load project backups in DaVinci Resolve. Older video, but still applies. Super important, create backups. And one of the cool things we do have in 18.5 now is the ability to have our timelines back up. So we always have auto backups for the project. We've got live save. We can back up our project library, aka the database. And now we can back up the timelines or have it automatically back up our timelines, which is pretty sweet because then you've just got, a running log of your changes, right? You want to save it every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it might be. You've got those changes. You don't have to create multiple timelines if you didn't want to. So that's kind of cool. But the question here from, let's see, what is it? I am cache me return. Okay, well, anyway, I exported my video to YouTube. Then I exported the project to an external hard drive. Then I deleted all the files to make the video. Then when I tried to open the project, all the files are missing. I see the backups selected already. Why wouldn't all the files get exported to the hard drive or to the extension to a hard drive? I'm using 18.5 and I had multiple ways to export. I can also, can I see the clips in the thumbnail from the project library? So why is it that they're there, but I can't see them on the timeline? So here's what happened. It sounds like you exported just your project file. Now, you do have multiple ways that you can export projects from DaVinci Resolve. You can export just the project file, right? Which if somebody else has, the media, right? Because it's just the project file for DaVinci Resolve. It's not your media. And if you were going to do that, for example, jump into Resolve here. If we take a look at, any project here, if I come in and I right click on here, we've got different options, right? We have export project, which is just your project file. It does not include any of your media, just the DaVinci Resolve project file, which is a smaller file. You're not going to get your media with it. So I think this is what you did here is export project, and that's only the project file. It's a small file, comes out of Resolve, and then you can import that back in, but you have to do something with your media, right? You can't just delete your media and then open your project and have it work, which is what it sounds like you did. Now, what I think you wanted to do, actually, was come down here and export project archive. Now, if you export project archive, that's going to bundle everything together. All your media, everything that you got in your project, in your timeline, all those clips, it's going to bundle all that together and boom, export it as like one package. So if you wanted to bring it to another computer, give it to somebody else, that export project archive is going to put all of that in one spot for you versus the export project is just that small little DaVinci Resolve project file that just says, hey, here's where, my clips are, here's where my audio is, here's where my sound effects are. It basically just points to everything and, builds the project for you, but it doesn't actually include the media itself. So you just got to be careful on which one of these options you're selecting and know what, what you're trying to achieve, what you want out of it. So that's another good video that I should make an updated video on because I've got so many good videos that are older that I should just recreate and make newer ones for updated versions of Resolve so that people know you can still do all these things. And it's just more current, because sometimes people might be like, hey, I'm not looking at that old video. That's for DaVinci Resolve 15. But you know what? It still works there. Everything, for the most part, that you had in older versions of Resolve, it all still works the same in the newer versions too. All right, moving on to the next one here. See, this is momentum on keyframes in the color page. I want to keyframe a magic mask and I need to make an adjustment to the AI. How can I do that in the color page? So let's just take a look here at the magic mask. Jump into the color page here in Resolve. And, I'm actually just going to, so I don't mess something up here. let's just create a new timeline and just dump a clip in here for us. Yeah, timeline 3 looks good. All right, let's just drop this in and make a cut here. So we've just got a little clip to work with here. Jumping into the color page. So you're trying to do the magic mask in Studio, which is this guy right here. Let's say I want to do person, and I'm going to select myself. Going to give it a minute to think. I'm going to turn on our overlay so I can see it once it's generated there. So I might take a minute to do that. And there we go. There's me. And you can track it forward and backward if you want. So the question is, you need to make an adjustment. How can you do that? So, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of adjustment you need to do. If you need to maybe take an area out, you can use other power windows to do that. So if I just add a new node maybe, and then, or actually maybe I could just do it right on here. Same node. Let's just create a power window. I'm going to boom, 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 take out half my head here. And I'm going to go like this. We can play with some of these options. Depends on what I'm trying to accomplish here. And now I can see if I go back into the magic mask here, you can see now it's cutting off my head there, right? Let's make this a little bigger here for us. So you can see that other power window that I applied is also applying in conjunction with the magic mask there. So you can use other power window tools to help kind of refine your mask if you want a little bit. Just depends on what you're trying to do. And if I invert that, you can see there's the shape that I drew, right, with my other power window. So I don't know exactly what kind of change you're trying to make, but you could do it that way. That might work. The other thing you can try is if it's losing track or if it's going too far out of bounds or something like that, try some of the different settings in the magic mask, obviously. But I would also maybe make the clip shorter and try doing, two separate tracks with the magic mask. So that way it's not, trying to follow too much, in one particular clip or whatever. That might work out pretty good. But yeah, so it just depends on what you're trying to do. You can combine masks, in the color tab here by using power windows as well as the magic mask. So that's kind of how I would approach that. Next question here we have is from Rick Hilbert. And this is on my DaVinci Resolve 18 for Beginners 2023 guide, everything you need to know. And actually, I'm going to make a new crash course soon here. I've got some great footage that I filmed last fall that I was actually going to use for the crash course, and I ended up doing something with a little bit easier footage that I had. So we're going to do another more in-depth one, maybe run through some more tabs and stuff, but probably going to be a long course. My crash courses usually end up being pretty long. 2 hours? 2 hours? I don't know. Anyway, Rick says, thanks, Jason, for the great starter video. You've got Casey Ferris beat by a long shot. Oh, no. Casey is awesome. I love Casey. He is such a great dude. Talked with him a lot. Spent some time with him at ResolveCon. Love Casey. He's the man. That's where I learned a lot of my stuff, all right? I'm not even kidding. That's how I got started in Resolve. Love Casey. Anyway, I can't understand the create a timeline settings thing. Do you either have a video dedicated to this, or can you give me some further explanation, please? If I've got some video clips shot at 30 frames per second, some at 60 frames per second, and some at 120 frames per second, in what order, which I did in order to help create better slow motion, the first clip I drag into my timeline gives me a pop-up asking if I want to change my timeline settings to the clip, or what settings should my timeline be in order to work with the 3 different speeds of clips that I have. How does this work? Thanks for any info that you can provide. So this was something that I struggled with a lot too when I first got into video editing, because I'm a photographer, right? That was my background, where I came from, and I wanted to make YouTube videos to help other photographers. And then I needed to learn some video, right? So I started filming some video, and the frame rate thing got me for a while, right? I was confused on, all right, I'm filming at a certain frame rate. What is my timeline frame rate? How do I slow down clips in my timeline? Like this just, it took a while to wrap my head around it. So I'm going to do my best here to explain it and break it down real simply for you. So when it comes to filming your clips, right, what you want to do is film your talking head stuff. For example, what I got right here, film that at something like 23.976 frames per second, 24 frames a second, maybe 25 if you're in Europe, I think. Maybe 30 frames per second, but it's going to be one of those frame rates is what I would recommend. Now, when you film your clips that you want to maybe do in slow motion, some action sequences, whatever it might be, that you can do it in, 30 or 120 like you recommended. So let's say, for example, that you're filming in 30 frames per second for your talking head here. When you take your footage and you get into DaVinci Resolve and you create a new timeline, so just jumping into DaVinci Resolve here, I'm in the Edit tab. Let's say I want to create a new timeline. I'm going to right-click in my media pool, create new timeline. Brings up our timeline options. Now in here, you can uncheck use project settings because I don't know what your project settings are, so we can set the timeline to be whatever we want. Going to jump into the format section. Now right here, the resolution, you want to match your clip, right? If you've got a strong machine, it's got some power to it, you filmed in 4K, go ahead and make a 4K timeline. What I recommend is that you edit in a 1920 by 1080 timeline because it's going to be easier on your computer. You're going to be able to edit quicker. You can always change it back to 4K or whatever higher resolution you might be using when you're done. But I recommend going with 1920 by 1080. Now down here, timeline frame rate. So this is going to be the frame rate that your talking head stuff is in, okay? So in my case, it's 23.976 frames per second. That's what my talking head is in. And that's what I want my timeline to be to play back that video smoothly, look natural, and be the way that I want it to look, okay? So 23.976 frames per second. So now I go ahead and click create. Now I know what's happening is when you drag in your other clips, say you're set up at 30 frames per second in your timeline. When you drag in a new clip, if you don't have any other clips in there, it's going to say, hey, do you want to change your frame rate to match your 120 frames per second? And the answer is no, you don't want to change that because then it's going to throw everything else off for your talking head. It's going to be like super slow motion there's not enough frames that you could do that, right? So you set it up at 30 frames per second for your talking head. You bring in all your footage. Don't let DaVinci Resolve change it on you. If it pops up a thing that says, hey, can I change it? Say, no, I got this. So you're going to dump in your talking head at 30 frames per second. Now you've got a clip that's in 60 frames per second that you want to play in slow motion. So you can drag and drop that into your timeline. You got your 60 frame per second there. Now, if you play it back normal, it probably looks okay because Resolve will automatically just play it back at 30 frames per second. But what you want to do is you can either do this in the media pool before you actually bring it into the timeline, or you can do it in the timeline itself, depending on what you're trying to do. But you want to right-click on the clip. So, for example, if I just come to one of my clips here in DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to right-click, come down to Clip Attributes right here. That's going to bring up this window, and under the Video tab, you're going to see Video Frame Rate. Now, if you had a video that was filmed at 60 frames per second, right, this is going to say 60. Well, I don't want it to play back at 60 because that's going to look like real time. I want it to play back, at 30 frames per second. So you would go here, change this to 30 frames per second, hit OK. Boom, there you go. Now when you play it in your timeline, it's going to be slow motion. So it's going to be at 50% speed because you're playing it back at half the speed, right? And you've got enough frames in there that you can do that. Now, if you were at, for example, 120 frames per second, then you could just do a little math and say, okay, well, if I'm at 30 frames per second, how many times can I slow down 120 to get to 30? And to figure that out, you bring up your little calculator, or if you're good with math in your head, 120 divided by 30 frames per second is 4. So I can slow it down. It's going to be 4 times slower, right? A quarter of the speed. So I can go from 120, I can change it all the way down to 30, and then it's going to play back in super slow motion, right? And maybe that's a little too slow. Maybe you don't need it that slow. It's up to you and what you want to do with your clip there. But then when you bring those in your timeline, they're going to play back at, 30 frames per second, and it'll be smooth, buttery slow-mo for you, especially that 120. Real buttery. But you want that talking head to stay at 30, right? You don't want to speed up or slow that down. So timeline settings should match your talking head, and I think that should get you going in the right direction. And if anybody's got questions on that, definitely leave another comment down below. And I actually think I'm going to make a video about that because the frame rate thing can be confusing, and it stumped me for a while, especially if you're new to video editing. I mean, if you've been around it for a little bit, you know it, I'm sure, and you got it down. But it can be a little challenging there. All right, moving on to the next question here. I can't find my update in DaVinci. I can't find 18.5. So if you are in DaVinci Resolve and you come here, DaVinci Resolve, and you go check for updates, and it says your software is up to date, but you would not have beta. You would have 18.4. You're actually not going to get the 18.5 beta update. It's not going to automatically update for you because it's in beta. So you would have to go to the Blackmagic Design website, download it from their website, whether it's Studio or the free version of 18.5 beta, and then you go ahead and install it. Once it is a full release, then you will see it in that check for updates, and you should be good to go. But in the meantime, you got to go download from their website. Now, I already got it, so it says I'm up to date, good to go, beta 2. So that is why you are not seeing it in your check for updates. And that'll go for any future version of Resolve 2. If it's in beta, you're not going to see it automatically appear in check for updates. Moving on to the next question here. Brownswick Bowling. On a voiceover video, is Fairlight the only place that DaVinci Resolve, or in DaVinci Resolve, where you can record voiceover? Because when I record a voiceover, it's actually play-by-play, and I'm calling action in a video. So I need the video window to be much larger than it appears in Fairlight. So yeah, the only place that you can record in DaVinci Resolve is in Fairlight. Now, you can make that video viewer bigger. So if I just open up a different timeline here, go back to my YouTube video. So if I jump into Fairlight here, the musical notes at the bottom, this is what he's talking about. This window is really small right here, and if you're trying to do a voiceover and it's hard to see what's going on there, especially if you're doing play-by-play, just click on this right here, floating window, boom. You can pop this guy out, and depending on your monitor space, I mean, I guess you probably don't need to see Fairlight. You can stretch this guy out, if I can get the handle there, and make it bigger. Come on, where are you? Sometimes it's so finicky, right? And you can make this as big as you want. So boom, there you go. You're good to go. If you got another monitor, you may even be able to throw it over there. I don't know. I got a big widescreen monitor here, so I got plenty of real estate where I could throw it off to the side. But that's going to how you do that. And you can always pop it back in with this button right here. All right, next question, please. We have is from Techno Lmax on Loudness. It says, Jason, I think that U2 means -5 to -3 dB maximum with a true peak of -1.5. Check the loudness meter when you hit the integrated, but also the short form loudness history of -14. Precisely look at the main volume. My main hits -3 dB at -14 LUFS. Could you please confirm this? I suck at audio, and this is why I am now trying my best to understand this once and for all, so that it doesn't give me a headache anymore. The problem with YouTube is that it does not bring up your volume if it's too quiet, but it does lower it if it's too loud. This is why your volume should not be much louder than 0 at Stats for Nerds. All the best. So yes, that's true. YouTube limits your audio to -14 LUFS. Now, LUFS is an audio measurement that is a combined measurement of your entire video. So not individual tracks, but all your video together. And I do have a video on loudness, and I should probably update this, make another one for you guys. But basically, you want to go through and set all your tracks first, right? So dialogue, you want to be around -10 dB. Music in the background, you might want to be between -20 and -30. Sound effects, that's going to vary depending on your sound effect. But once you get a good mix, you got your levels set, then you're going to want to go in and check your loudness. And just jumping in and Resolve here real quick. To find the loudness, right, how you see it is you need to have this guy toggled on right here, which is your automation. And if you go all the way down to your main bus 1, and if it's big enough, right, if it's small, like this, you're not going to see it. You have to extend this guy out here. Whoop. Drop them down. You got loudness history right here, right? I'm just going to go ahead and mute this real quick, and I'm going to play through. Just going to reset, start. So the loudness is going to show us, okay, is our video too loud? Is it not? Now, this 0 line right here represents -14 LUFS, which is the combination of all of our audio, right? And you are going to see a blue line pop up here, and this is going to be what the loudness is over time. You can also see your momentary loudness as well as your short term, but I don't worry about that too much because I've got compressors and things on my audio channels. But what I want is that integrated level, right? And I want that to stay close to, but not over, this 0 line, which I have set up to represent -14 LUFS. So this may be confusing for you, and if you're not sure about it, you can check out that loudness video. But what you want to do is just make sure that you're not up over that line, right? If it gets too loud, so if I just crank this all the way up, let's see if I can, I don't even know if I can make it loud enough right now. If I just crank all that, see, okay, so now you see we got the yellow line, red. We are way too loud. If I uploaded this video to YouTube, not only is it peaking right here, which would sound like junk anyway, but if I uploaded that to YouTube, YouTube is going to automatically compress it down to be within their audio requirements. And you don't want YouTube to do that, right? Because then it's just going to make your stuff sound like garbage. Now, a lot of times you might watch a YouTube video and you find you got to turn your volume all the way up, right? You're like, I'm just not loud enough. Loudness is the reason why some YouTube videos seem loud. I can watch it at, 50% volume, 25%, and I can hear it fine. And other videos, I need to turn my volume all the way up. I can hardly hear it. It's because the volumes that are quieter are not bringing their total audio up to that level that YouTube recommends or allows you to push your audio up to. So it doesn't mean anything's peaking. if you're at minus 14 LUFS. It's just a combination of, all your audio and what that LUFS level is. There's a whole lot more that goes into what LUFS are and all that, which is above my pay grade. but you want to set your LUFS level for your YouTube video so that way YouTube doesn't squash it down for you, because then it's not going to sound good. And the commenter there is right that if your audio is too quiet, YouTube's not going to bring it up for you. It's just you got quiet audio on YouTube. But if it's too loud, then it'll be like, oh, whoa there, partner. We're going to smash that down for you. So, so definitely you want to make sure you're setting loudness and checking that and making sure nothing's peaking there. And another reason why I like that limiter I mentioned earlier, because I can bring everything up a little bit, limit it, and kind of work with it to make sure I'm getting as close to I can without going over that minus 14 LUFS. And a lot of times, as you can see in this video here, I'm not even that close. I still have minus 2 dB to go, but I don't want to push it too much. I'd rather be a little bit under it than be right on it. So keep that in mind when you're working with loudness. So that wraps up the questions here in DaVinci Resolve. And I just want to take a quick minute and throw on the screen here everybody who has given super thanks to me over the last few months. Something I want to do is start thanking those people who, decide to pitch me a few bucks, whether it be a tip, a couple dollars to say thank you on the super thanks through YouTube there. Really appreciate your guys' support. Not only, giving, money through super thanks or picking up some of my digital products or merch or using a link in the description or even just watching a video. I mean, that helps support me more than you guys know. And I really do appreciate all you guys for watching and listening to the podcast, watching my YouTube videos. So I just want to throw these people on the screen and thank them. Running down their names real quick. To Villapolo La Panandi. Some of these are really tricky to say. The Harjanjo, Uncle Stu, the old man on the block. I've chatted with you, man. Really appreciate you. Joseph Shields, Samahan Sawant. I apologize. I'm probably butchering everybody's name here, but doing the best I can. George Tillman, Gary Morse, Eric Cooper, Semantics for Everyone, Semantics for Everyone, Joel Smith. Appreciate you guys. All you guys that's over the last couple months here on my YouTube channel of people giving super thanks. Really appreciate you guys. I couldn't do this job without you guys. I really appreciate that you watch and everything. And it just allows me to sit here and make videos for you guys, teach DaVinci Resolve, and really just kind of share my experience in the program and help people out there. That's the best part about YouTube here, is being able to help you guys out there. I love answering questions and being able to learn this stuff, share with you guys, and help support your passion of creating videos out there. And just helping you guys learn more about DaVinci Resolve, And it's been a great journey for me here on YouTube over the last couple years. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better way to make a living and have a job here. It's really awesome, and it's a huge blessing. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 7 here of the DaVinci Resolve podcast. I'm going to do my best to get back to doing this a little bit more often now that I'm in the new studio, trying to crank things out. I would like to get some guests on here. Are you guys interested in jumping on and being on the podcast? It's one thought I had. Maybe get some of you guys on here. We could chat some DaVinci Resolve. And while I don't have all the answers, maybe I can help you out along the way a little bit. Could be fun. So if you are interested in that, comment down below. Let me know. But with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of the DaVinci Resolve podcast. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you. Peace.